Hello and a big warm welcome to you. My name's Marion Rose.
And I'm Lael Stone.
And today's podcast is all about partnerships, and it's another Q&A. So we've had lots of lovely questions coming in. Thank you so much for all of those. And we're going to do our utmost to respond. And as always, when we're responding to questions, please hold in mind that, we're just reading a few sentences and really guessing based on what you are sharing with us. This is not to replace going and having sessions with someone. So if you are, if you're having a hard time, we always recommend connecting with an aware parenting instructor or a counselor or therapist to get some support.
Yes, beautiful. And I'm just going to say, currently I'm recording down at my school, so you may hear the beautiful sounds of children playing and laughing, which is the most beautiful sound. And if that's in the background today, that's because I'm at my school. And you'll probably hear the beautiful sounds of the birds chirping in Marion's background because she lives in with the beautiful birds. So I love that we are so real and organic in our podcast, where all these beautiful noises come and just add to the ambience.
I love that ambience. Yum.
Yeah, beautiful. So I feel like this podcast is one that or just this topic is something that it can't not turn up in when we're parenting, because to come back to the basics, we both come from different families. We were raised often in different ways. We bring all our own stories, or what I would say imprints, to the new family that we're creating, and it is inevitable that some of our wounds or past hurts or stuff that we need to work through is going to be activated when we're in partnership. So even if you don't have children, and we know this, that stories come up in partnership, whether we feel like our partner doesn't listen, whether we feel like they don't pull their weight, whether they feel that we nag all the time, like whatever it is that we often have the rub up against relationship. Well, I know the way I look at it, and I'm sure you do too, Marion, is it's an invitation to lean into, what's this about for me? Because as you so beautifully put it, there's a quote, or there's something that you say, Marion, I can't remember it off the top of my head, which is really about often our unfinished wounds or stuff that we carry from our childhood will turn up with our partners. And it can often tap us into the unconscious parts of us that are still working through the childhood wounds, and we can often do that with our current partner. So we can play out an authoritarian father element, or we can play out, the being the good boy and feeling like we can never get it right in the eyes of our mother. I mean, there's many different configurations of that, but there is no doubt, I have found in my own relationship, and also working with a lot of people, that we bring a lot of those stories to the current relationship, and we are very good as humans making it about the other person, where the other person is wrong. If only they would do this, or if only they would change that, then we would be okay. And as we know, so much of parenting consciously, or aware parenting, is really leaning into, well, what is this about for me, and what does this bring up, and where am I sitting in this big story? So, relationships are just dynamite for this stuff.
I love all of that, Lael. And the way I see it, and this isn't aware parenting, but I believe that we will often choose partners who remind us in some ways of our family of origin, even though we may not see that right at the beginning when we're in that lovely honeymoon phase. And the way I see it is that we do that on purpose too, because we're constantly wanting to heal what hasn't been heard and healed for the first time around. And so exactly as you said, Lael, that these, rather than these being things that are wrong, these are opportunities, I would say. And the more we can understand that, the more we can see when we're being reactive with our partner or ex-partner, that is an opportunity to listen, to see where it comes from. Of course, actually see at times where we may, there may be things we need to speak our no to. So it's not just about doing our own inner work, it is about relationship. But it changes everything, doesn't it, when we see it as an opportunity and part of the process. Just like parenting, really seeing that part of it is the continual, constant, repeated opportunities that we get to see what shows up for us from our younger experiences, that just wants to be heard, just wants to have reparative experiences. Changes everything, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And I think if, in an ideal world, we would do all our own emotional growth work before we partner up. We would do all that beautiful therapy, and we would look at our stories, and we would unpack them all, and we would be very, very aware of the wounds that present themselves, and then we would go out there and seek and find a partner. And so you come to the relationship not as you're going to fix me and make me feel better and make me feel enough. We would come to the relationship with a consciousness and a healed place within you, perhaps. But we don't do that. We kind of seek out the person, exactly as you say, that can go, hey, I'll help, I'll reflect back to you where your story is. Hey, I'm the perfect person to do this. Oh, you've got some feelings there. Great, I'm going to do that. So we kind of seek them out, and we do that. And then we decide to have children. And so then we just throw another beautiful, beautiful thing into the mix. And then, of course, we have children, and we bring our own stories to that parenting. And, I've seen this a lot. Well, this was kind of how it played out in my relationship, and also with many people I've worked with. And I'm sure you've watched this too, Marion, is, one parent perhaps becomes very authoritarian and uses a lot of power over, and then the other parent becomes very permissive and wanting to keep the peace. And we start again playing out what happened in our own families of origin. And then we often have, discussions or disagreements of how it should be. And, that played out for me and my husband. His default often was to power over our kids in their early days. And mine was just to make it all be okay all the time. So I'm trying to sing songs and make it be all okay and all right. And my husband's like, that's not good enough. And it was not very nice at all, because we were both just in our stories. And, I didn't really have boundaries and limits that I could hold and set, because I felt very scared about what would happen. And my husband had a story of, if I'm not in control here, then it's not going to be okay. So of course we brought that to our parenting, and our kids are sitting in the middle going, can you two adults please sort this out, because it doesn't feel very harmonious in our family. And that is ultimately what drove me to looking at this and doing this work, so that we could have had that harmonious approach, and that we could heal our stuff and then bring that to our family, so our children did know where the foundation sat, and it did feel safe for them to express themselves, and all the beautiful stuff we've seen since. So it's very common that we come to relationships with our wounds, that we work through them, that we then can project them onto our kids, or just there's many elements that go with it. So of course, as we say all the time, compassion for yourself, whatever your story is, whatever you're bringing to the mix, however it feels for you in your relationship, lots of compassion for us all doing the best job that we know how, and continuing to do the work.
I'm so resonating with what you said about the permissiveness and authoritarianness. So in the my work, the Marion method work, I talk about love and will, and I see that so often, don't we, that one partner will often polarize, and it has historically often been, if it's a heterosexual relationship, that the woman polarizes more toward love but without enough will, so that's the permissiveness, and the man more to the authoritarianness, so not enough love. And I do often find that's can be such, if it is, and whatever the polarity is, and whoever and what gender the person is, that often it does split in that way. And we get that opportunity is, how do we, if we're on the permissive side, how do we learn about being loving and compassionate, as well as offering loving limits, and being able to say no when we need to, and being able to look after our needs. And if we're more on the other polarity of the harshness and the will, how do we reconnect with true will, which is loving and compassionate? So we actually bring in compassion, so we can also, coming into loving limits and being able to actually say no in loving ways, and listen to the feelings that underlie behaviors that we're saying no to, or we move in with attachment play, or so I again see that so often a wonderful opportunity in partnerships of how that shows up in parenting, and the opportunity to find that more internal balance between love and will, or masculine and feminine, inside ourselves through parenting. The other thing I wanted to add is, I think, is an extra thing added into the mix if we're wanting to practice aware parenting. So not only do we all bring our own family of origin hurts, but often then there is the the cultural conditioning, and often it is just one parent who gets really into aware parenting, and then that's a whole nother layer, because then it's one the old cultural conditioning versus this new / even older way of being and way of thinking about children and human beings. And that is humongous. And I really want to say, just as you said about compassion, not to underestimate the hugeness of that. We've not only got all of our own familial hurts, our childhood hurts, this whole cultural paradigm piece, which can be so huge. If you're holding aware parenting paradigm and your partner is holding the more traditional, what has been mainstream up until recently, that is a mammoth thing to be working with. And I think anybody in that position, just so much love and compassion and empathy and understanding, because that is a big thing to be dealing with. And again, I often do see that coming across in gender lines, and again, not always, so my apologies if this isn't how it is for you, but often I think if it's the mother and you're not an adopted mother and you've given birth, I often find that there's we both worked in birth, you much more than I, that rite of passage that happens during birth that actually opens a woman up to actually really changing things in ways that sometimes men who don't have that rite of passage into becoming fathers are not necessarily changed so much. And I do think there's something about that with aware parenting, that being willing to look at everything differently. And that again can be so, the big conflicts happen between partners around that too.
I love that. I love that insight you just put then. I agree 100%. I see that as well. Yeah. Beautiful insights. I love that. Should we dive into some questions? Yes. Okay. So one of the questions here: as the primary caregiver, I feel a lot of the mental load of researching and learning about parenting and what feels right for my family falls on me. My husband is always supportive and on board with adopting whatever I've been learning and finding out, but I struggle with feeling that I'm the teacher rather than we're equals in learning about parenting. I feel like many people could have written
yes,
this.
I was going to say, so I think so many people, and again, I think that is so often, and again, my apologies if this isn't fit for your family, if you're listening, but it is the stereotype that we've often both seen, is that the mother often gets into aware parenting and learns about it and reads the books and listens to the podcasts, and then is trying to, or not, who's imparting this information. So I want to say, you are so not alone in this experience. And I suppose the thing is then to be working with is what the part around what did she say, having that sense of being the teacher and struggling with it. So I would be inquiring into what's lots of empathy, what's that like for you, how do you feel, what shows up for you, what does it remind you of, are there conversations you can be having, so that there is more of a sense of a sharedness about it. And that may be in different ways. So there may be ways that your partner does brings in information that you perhaps don't. I think often again that can be really seeing the strengths, but really looking at what is this. Is there a way that you could almost relax into actually enjoying being in that role, being the one who's kind of offering guidance, offering information in really enjoyable, fun ways? It would be fun to support someone learning new things. I wonder what your thoughts are there.
Well, I really relate to this because this is what's happened in my dynamic. Is it's a really strong desire and passion of mine to understand humans, and I've always been like this. As a 7-year-old, I used to say to my friends, "Tell me what you see are my challenges." Like I remember just as a young kid getting friends to tell me, "What do you think I need to work on in my personality?" Like I was constantly, I've always been interested in humans and how we interact and relationships and all those kind of things. So it's a passion of mine, not such a passion for my husband, right? Now, it doesn't mean that he doesn't love being a parent, and it doesn't mean that he doesn't absolutely adore our children or me. But I began to learn, and I remember feeling bits and pieces of this frustration when we were parents, if I was doing the work and I was exploring. But what I've loved, I guess, and I've learned in my dynamic is that it is always going to be me who's going to be seeking. I am a seeker. I want information. I want to learn. I want to understand. I want to grow. And my husband is really receptive to me coming back going, hey, this is what I figured out. This is what I've learned. He's like, yeah, okay, well, what will that look like? And he's never going to sit down and read a book ever. Like he won't listen to podcasts. He doesn't do that, but he learns through me telling him stories, or he learns through me modeling what it looks like, and through being open and willing to have discussions around how could we do that better, which we've had many conversations about over the years. When something hasn't felt good, we come back together when we're calm, and I'll go, oof, how'd that feel for you? How could we do it better next time? Where are you sitting? And we've always been respectful enough to have those conversations to learn and grow together. So I think in my dynamic, and he even owns that, he's like, Layla's the one that goes and does the work, and then she comes it back to and tells me, and then I pass it off to my friends like I've done the work. So we joke about that, and he goes, but that's how it is. And I don't need him to be anything different. And I guess what I would offer this person is just that he loves exactly as you say in many different ways, and it's not that he would do anything for our children, but the development work of raising kids consciously is not something that he's like, wow, I really want to learn more about it. I think he just goes, that's your wheelhouse. Show me, tell me, and I'll be up for it, and I'll learn. So I think there is something, as you said too, about really leaning into what does that teacher role feel like for you. And there's been many times where I have felt frustrated. I'm like, why isn't he doing the work and looking into this? And then realizing actually that's not going to help him do it. And it's also making him wrong for not doing it. And how can I find a place where I meet my needs in that, and also, feel like we're doing this together, which I absolutely feel like we are. So I really do relate to this question. And I think I've just seen the beauty in just knowing that we come from different places, and that's okay.
Yeah, I can also really resonate. And what I found with the father of my children is I would give all the information, and then often I would, he would come in with ways of being that I hadn't yet embodied. So, for example, loving limits with our daughter, when she was about 2, for me, I was very much on the love side, very much on the, listened to a lot of feelings, but loving limits really took me a long time to get, as we've talked about before. And I remember him just several times just really expressing these, us all 3 together, and him expressing these beautiful loving limits, and me kind of going, no, but I wanted, I want to distract, and just really getting, the gift of seeing him do that really helped me embody it more. So I think again, it's really seeing, the gifts that each partner brings, and the beauty of that.
Yeah, I love that too, because I relate to that, because Mike was very good at playing and being silly and fun, and I was far more serious, and he taught me a lot about that. And I see that was one of his beautiful strengths, is the playfulness and all that joy and laughter that he still defaults to now, and I see that again. I thought just because I hold the feelings and I do all that heavy stuff, that makes it better, but it's not. It's all valid and beautiful, and adds the richness to the family. So yeah, I really relate to that. Okay, let's move on. Also, you want to
just want to add one more thing with lots of baby birds making noise. I hear that a lot as well. And again, my apologies, but on gender lines, it is often the mums who are like, I'm going to listen to feelings, and often dads who are more, naturally, not naturally, but more still connected to that playfulness. And again, like really celebrating each person's where they feel comfortable and where they contribute. It's really helpful.
Yeah. So here's a quick one, and then it'll lead into the next one. How would you approach encouraging your partner to become more involved? Do you want to speak to that first, Marion?
Well, first of all, getting some listening, probably from someone else, around any feelings that you might have around them not being more involved. If you feel frustrated or powerless or depressed, or whatever is going on for you. And again, this can often help us connect with younger parts and past experiences. So perhaps if it's you're a woman and it's your male partner who's not being involved, it might remind you of your own dad, and how was he, and what, how did you feel, and actually getting some listening around that again, so that the more we come in with that piece already a little bit taken care of, the more we're going to be able to come in ways that are inviting, perhaps playful, compassionate, to really understand. Often if someone isn't involved so much, it's often because of feelings that they're protecting themselves from, because being with kids helps us connect with our own child experiences, our own hurts, our painful feelings. So I think the more we can do to come in, and then come in with agreeing to have discussions for 10 minutes with each person, listening to each other, or coming in playfully like, oh, would you like to do this, or just an inviting, willing, loving way, everyone is more likely to want to do more if they're invited in that way, aren't they?
Yes, I love that. Thank you, birds, as well. No, I really love that. They're beautiful suggestions, Marion, because you're so right. And I see this a lot too, when it's tapping into our own stories of not being supported or thinking they're not care, like there usually are some roots somewhere within that. So I love you brought that up. The other thing I would like to say about that piece too, and this may not apply, but I have definitely found this in my own journey, is I was a very capable woman and mother who used to do everything. So there wasn't actually even much space for my partner to do stuff in the beginning. And my way of, I think, feeling in control when I was actually feeling very out of control was to do everything and do it my way. And so there actually wasn't really that much space for my partner to be involved. And because I was taking up all the space. And so part of him was like, well, there's no point, Leia was going to do it. And it wasn't actually until I went away for the first time, I think, when it was like the first time I went away for like 6 days, and my kids were like 5 and 2 or something, 2.5, something like that. And my husband was like, oh my God, you need to go away every year for at least a week and a half. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yes, because it made space for me to be with the kids and do it in a whole other way. And you do everything. And, he's laughing. He's like, they were late to school every day. I go, did you feed them lunch? He goes, sometime, yeah, probably, but not till like 3 o'clock. I'm like, I was like, okay, but they survived. But what was really important for both of us was that I took up a lot of the space and did it all because I was capable and I could, and I just knew how to do it. And therefore, on some level, I was really sabotaging him actually being more involved and feeling resentful that he wasn't doing more things, because A, I wasn't actually asking him, and B, there wasn't enough space to. So that, I'm not sure if that's what's applicable in this situation, but that is something that I definitely learned and went, right, I'm going away more often. And I still see that now. It creates spaces and more opportunities for the kids to lean into him in a different way. And yeah, so that might be helpful to someone.
Yes, there can be all kinds of reasons, can't they, why we're like, I want you to do this, I want you to do this, and actually we're really invested in it not happening like that, and we're actually not willing for that to happen. So it can be really interesting to inquire into actually what's really going on.
That's a big one. I think that's a big one that's alive in many people. Maybe you're sitting there listening to this nodding going, oh, actually that's probably what I do. All right, the next question is, when the partner hasn't gotten involved with aware parenting but agrees with many things I tell him about, and you see so many situations where you want to step in because you can see how behaviors are hurting the relationship between partner and child. This can feel really big and tricky. Do you want to start?
Yeah, and I think there are places where like it's really important to, well, as much as possible, like beforehand, preventative, as much as possible, having discussions away from the children, having listening time with each other, and actually saying, when would you like me to give you suggestions, or how do you find it easier, or would you like to, let's talk about the different situations that are away from the kids. And I know that can be really hard to even have time to do that. But the more we do those things when we're already feeling a bit calm, when we're actually getting to listen to each other, the more likely it's going to prevent really tricky things. Because so often what comes up for people is, and again, it's often mums who are saying, no, you have to do it this way, and even the language, and you have to do it this way, or you should do it this way, or this is the way to do it. It all becomes right and wrong and good and bad. And then often the other partner goes back to younger experiences of being judged, being shamed, being told that they're not doing it right. So the more we can prevent that from happening in the first place by actually having the kinds of helpful discussions, that's going to be helpful for everyone. It's not helpful for kids to be around those kinds of discussions either. And then just finding loving ways, and that might be asking each other, if you're if you're doing something and I can see you're maybe in a reactive place in yourself, which is, where harsh things come from always, or our own conditioning, how would it be if I move in and just put my hand on your back? Would that, what would help you in the moment? Because basically when we're going into those places in ourselves, we need more support, not more judgment or, do it this way kind of thing. So I think really finding those ways to really gently support each other, really seeing it as working together as a team. And again, that's going to be really hard so often, because so often big hurts come up for us, don't they? And again, it may be our own childhood experiences come up of, being treated harshly. So if our partner's going in with a punishment or with a shaming, often our younger parts come up and remember being shamed or judged. So we've not only got adult us, we've got those little parts going, no, I don't want you to do that. And of course we don't want anyone to do that to our children, but the more we untangle it and get clearer about that and take responsibility, get lots of listening, the more likely it's going to go a little bit more smoothly.
That is so good. That is such beautiful insights, because I think that absolutely sits at the crux of most of those situations. For me, what I used to do, if I could see, I remember saying this in a group I rang once for people in person, and we were talking about how you just have only so much left when you're listening to kids' feelings, and then you reach a point where you look at your partner and you go, can you please just deal with the kids, and because you're so exhausted, and then your partner comes in and just starts powering over and yelling, and then you go, no, I've still got something left, and then you're just racing because you're like, no, I don't want you to do that. I want you to help me, but I don't want you to come in and get angry and yell at them or punish them, because that doesn't feel good either, and so we were kind of all laughing and joking at how all of a sudden you can be so depleted, and then you're like, no, I'm back because I don't want that to happen. My husband and I, as we worked through these situations, we did come up with languaging that was, when it's starting to get heated, when we see one of us either out of balance and we're acting in that way, that the other person will come in and say, do you need some help right now? And just that was usually the thing to stop us in our tracks, so that we could both be like, yeah, and who's got more reserves in this moment to meet it compassionately and with understanding. And also, we've shared this in our podcast, from a young age, when our kids were really, could understand, we would say to them, if you see mum or dad acting in a way that's with, angry words, or we're powering over you, we give you full permission to call us out on that. And our kids did. We really empowered them to say, you can say, you are not speaking to me kindly, or I don't like what you're doing here. And that stops you in your tracks as well, when you go, oof, wow, I'm not in my center here. And so, we made a deal as a family that Mike and I would do it for each other, but also that our kids would call us out on it as well. And that was pretty powerful to do it. And I think, you're exactly right. The point you bring up, Marion, which is so, I see that a lot, is when we're trying to say to our partner, do it this way, or you should do it like that, it absolutely can tap people back into the, I'm not doing it right, and the wounded child parts of us. And that can feel really powerless. So what do? We want to power back up and, over, and all those kind of things. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. And I think it is, as you say, in those places of calm and connection where we go, how can we do this better? How do we feel it went? And often when stuff did blow up a bit, it was only after that Mike and I would sit down and go, how could we have done that better? What do you feel? What is going on here? And that, allowed us both to own our own behavior and keep working towards, we want to do it better. Yeah. And just a little side note, particularly teenagers, as our kids got bigger and older, there were many times where something may have happened with one of our kids, and what we learnt to do is we'd say to our kids, we're going to come back to you in a bit, and Mike and I would go into the bedroom and we'd both go, what are you feeling? And he would say, and I'd go, well, I'm feeling this. And we made a commitment to unpack all our own feelings first before we even dealt with our kids, so that we could actually clear whatever our fears were, what was going on, what was up for us, so we could come back to then communicate it in a way that was far more centered, so that we weren't being reactive. And that was something that has been very, very powerful with our teenagers. And you can't do that often with little kids, because they'll just follow you into the room and they're right in your face. And and we sometimes need to stay really present with them. But that has been a beautiful tool for us to pause a bit with our teens, go in, talk about our fears, what's going on for you, what do you feel, where are we at, and then come back to what would connection look like right now, and how do we do this in a way where do we need a limit, or what do we need, and how can we do it in a way that's deeply respectful. And that's been just one of the best things that we've done, for sure.
I love hearing that, Lael. You know what I find helpful is also if we can have in our mind, if our partner or ex is responding harshly to our child or children, they are responding either from their younger hurt parts, their unexpressed feelings from the past one, or their cultural and family conditioning. That's where those harsh things come from. So if we can hold that in mind and like have it tattooed, it's just like with children, all the things that we talk about, they're not doing it deliberately. They're not trying to be harsh. They're in the past. And if we can remember that, we're more likely to be able to move in. And sometimes we might even be able to move in with a little bit of attachment play, like, oh, looks like dad's feeling a little bit grumpy. Let's all do the grumpy dance for a minute or something, and sometimes if we can remember, again, the less likely we're in our own younger parts or cultural conditioning, the more likely we're going to move in a way that's warm and loving and supportive for the whole family system, which is through compassion or attachment play. Or we may actually want to come in and actually almost get in between and actually express a little bit of a no or a limit, but we're not going to be able to do that very effectively if we're in a reactive past place in ourselves.
100%. Okay, next question. Really new to aware parenting, so really struggling to bring the hubby on board because it literally flies in the face of everything he knows. Biggest thing I face is that how do we know this works? All he sees is the increase in emotions in the house, and he sees all the validating as indulging, that we're going to turn them into horrible kids who get everything they want and allowed to speak disrespectfully to us. Also, empathy is something my hubby is still learning, so asking him what compassion looks like, or basically another language. He says he knows it's all fake and that he wants to help her get over it. I also really struggle to not always lecture or jump in when it's going wrong. And I don't think I'm a very good empathy partner for him because I have judgment, but there's no one else in his life he can rage to. This is really tough, but I know it's the right thing for our little Elise. Oof, I really feel that. It's big. It's really big. Sending a lot of compassion and understanding about being in this place where part of you knows, yes, this actually makes a lot of sense to me, but perhaps what's up with your partner is, as you've mentioned before, those cultural conditions or his own wounds that can't see perhaps what is possible there.
I'd love to add to that. It's like really, I think, coming back to exactly as you said, seeing the hugeness of this. This is thousands of years of cultural conditioning that we are addressing and changing. This is not something that is easy, and particularly if it is, often, again, I would say, I'm sorry, I'm really generalizing along gender lines today, but often because still in this era, and getting less and less so, but dads often were brought up to say, don't cry. Often boys who are now dads did get treated more harshly. They were shamed more, they were punished more, they had more harsh limits, they were shamed for crying. So often it is a really big step, again, both culturally and familiarly. So I just think so much compassion for everyone in the family about how big this is. This is not a small thing, it's a really big thing. So I think just oodles and oceans of compassion for everybody and about how hard that is, because changing our core beliefs about human beings, the true nature of human beings, what makes us how we are, what causes our behavior, why we are the way we are. Because when we look at this, if we're going to treat our children in a different way, that necessitates us addressing what happened to us and actually saying, oh, maybe it wasn't fine, that I was treated in X, Y, and Z way. Maybe I have got all these painful feelings. Maybe all the feelings I'm seeing in my child, guessing this might be some of the things the dad's feeling. Maybe I've got all that big crying, unexpressed and raging, and it's a humongous thing. And I just think, gosh, wouldn't it be wonderful if we all had just the massive villages of helpers and loving people who could just support us through it, because it's massive.
It is. And, some practical suggestions. I mean, I really hear what you're saying, Marion, and what I take from that too is it is sometimes a very gentle work in progress, because we are turning a big ship around that has, driven one way for a very, very long time. I think the things I have found that has helped me, my own dynamic, is when my husband has been upset or angry or sad, I have really modeled what that compassionate listening looks like. So I'll listen and I won't judge, and I'm like, I hear your anger. And when it's passed and he's more in center, I would have said to him, how did it feel for you then when I was just listening and offering you that empathy and compassion? And he could go, well, it felt good. And I go, okay, so can you see that if I had have come in like this, and then I'd give him stupid examples of, yeah, but it's your fault because you should have done this, and like, and I'll come in with this, all these things. I go, how do you reckon that feels? And he'll be like, yeah, that doesn't feel very good. And I'm like, okay, so what do you think our kids need in that? So sometimes it was really the way I responded to him and then highlighted how that felt. He could begin to say, yeah, actually, that's how it would feel better for our children. The other thing too is that I feel like, and not just with my partner, but with, some families I've worked with, is that men need to see a role model of someone that they look up to or they respect. And unfortunately, I don't think we have a lot of this when it comes to parenting, but a really embodied man who does understand this, who meets his children with compassion and understanding, who talks to why this is so important. And when he could see that actually, yes, this is actually going to help our children to thrive, and the science behind it, if they need that science understanding, or they need to see how powerful it can be, and then the relationship that can exist with your children, that also helped. We were really lucky when we had little kids. We lived 2 doors down from this beautiful family, and Brian, he had I think 4 or 5 kids at the time, and he was just a natural dad. And we had babies at the same time. I think it was his 5th child, and it was our first. And Mike and Brian used to stand on the street and chat and talk with the babies, and it was like there was this role model of how you could do it in a way, which was such a blessing, I think, for my husband, as equally I needed the female equivalent of that, of how could you do it in another way. So I think we need that, in our communities for sure. We need those elders, or those people that we can say, hey, yeah, there's a whole other way to do it. I mean, I look at sometimes things like, the work that Gabor Mate is doing of just helping to understand where trauma comes from and the impact of it, or some of the other really amazing people who've put work out there as to the why behind aware parenting and why it is so powerful. That can also be when we can show them. I mean, Elisa's books are amazing, right? But I don't know many men, perhaps, and again, I know we're being really gendered here, that will sit down and read them all. Whereas my husband wasn't going to, but he needed some other information or articles or science or whatever it was to help him go, oh, okay, actually I can understand why this works. And that started to make sense for him. So I think it is coming to your partner, and whether it is you modeling what it feels like to be met with compassion and understanding, or whether it's science that maybe gets them over the line, or whether it's a mentor that gets them over the line, but can we be open and look for examples of why perhaps it works in our community?
Yeah, I'm remembering that my children's dad and we facilitated a dad's group for quite a while, and that was so often a question that came up amongst the dads, is, and from such a loving place, of course, because around, will my child then be an X, Y, and Z, rather than this loving, helpful member of society, which I think, we all want our children to be. That is like, if I'm not punishing, if I'm not shaming, if I'm not, being harsh with limits, are they just going to be these people who are not helpful? And so I think it's such a big question. And again, it comes to the to the root of our conditioning, which is based on that. You know, we could look at behaviorisms based on the idea that if you want a child to behave in a loving, compassionate way, you need to use punishments and rewards. You need to change the behavior. And as we talk about all the time, and as you say so beautifully, Lau, this is all about looking behind the behavior and actually really addressing it at the root cause. And I think, again, as you said, actually understanding not only the brain science, but actually the psychological understanding of why humans act as they do, so that the mind gets really satiated with, okay, this is why. It's not just a fluffy thing. It's, there's really strong on all levels of science that really that show us why this and how this works. And the other little practical thing is, when perhaps your child is agitated and antsy and isn't able to go to sleep, and maybe they just, all the things, and maybe they have a massive tantrum or a really big cry, and then really inviting that other parent to observe how they are afterwards. So to me, that is science too, is we're doing our own experiments. We get to see before, during, and after, we get to observe and to really get to notice, how do they feel in their bodies? Their muscles are more relaxed, they're smiling, they're happy, they're asking what can they do to help, they're able to go to sleep, they're gentle with the dog, they're cuddling their sister, to just I think just a few times of really experiencing that. And to me, that's the greatest thing about aware parenting. It's so obvious. You don't need to, I mean, I'm just kind of going against what I just said. We actually don't need all that other science, because we're doing the experiments ourselves, and it's as clear as day. Do it a few times, you see the clear difference, and you don't need to be, getting more affirmations from other people, because it's just obvious. So that would be another suggestion.
I love that. You're so right. And I think once you have seen that evidence and once you've lived it, you just you go, but how can you not?
Just like obvious.
Yeah. But again, I want to come back to this, as you're saying too, the cultural conditioning of what we're dealing with is so big. It is so big, and that's why I think when we are looking at our partner and we're wanting to make them wrong for not getting it, or it's to really be really compassionate and understanding. Most of this was never modeled to us. We've never felt it ourselves, let alone seen it in action. So of course we're going to come from this place of like, no, this is what I've been taught. This is how I was raised. This is the right way to do it. Because the fear is, if we don't do this, my child will end up being X, Y, Z, and then that will reflect badly on me. And so, yeah, it's big. Okay.
I'm going to just add, I know I was saying the same thing, but just, to really get that this just isn't about parenting, but it actually invites us to question everything that we think about being what it is to be human. And that, of course, there's all kinds of parts of us that do not want to change. It's challenging to change. We need to face painful feelings, past hurts. It's stretching and changing is often not something that the psyche wants to do. So again, it's big. This is really big.
So big. Okay, so there's kind of two questions here. I'm just going to pull out the main ones because they're similar kind of thread. My partner is really supportive in the theory of listening to feelings, but then whenever our 7-month-old is having a release, he tries to distract her or stop her from crying, and always gives reasons for her tears, like she doesn't want to be in bed. When he gives reasons, I take it so personally and get really triggered and mad. I would love some of your advice. So I'm just going to put that there. And then this other person's question, which is really quite similar, is 3-month-old little one. My partner is on board but has trouble with crying in arms. I do most of it because he gets over it very quickly. How can I support my partner with the crying in arms? We've been chatting about it, but his imprint around feelings, and what he says is that he bottled up his feelings a lot as a kid because he didn't want to feel like a burden to his family, and he doesn't see that there's an issue with this because it's been a pattern that served him well in his life. So similar kind of themes for both these questions of, I kind of get it, but it feels really uncomfortable and hard doing it.
And again, it comes back to what we said right at the beginning, is which our biggest, most painful hurts are going to show up in the relationship and in parenting when you got both together. So basically, the partner who finds it unbearable to listen to feelings is because there's thousands of hours of unexpressed crying sitting inside that body. Thousands. Of course it's going to be scary and terrifying and all kinds of feelings. So again, just so much compassion about gentle ways, like gentle ways forward about even it might be, first of all, do you have a sense of that you feel upset, or how do you feel in your body when you hear them crying, or what would you like me to do when I'm, do you want me to also put my hand on you when, whatever, just a little gentle steps. And then for that first question, the same on the other side is, what is this reminding the mum of? Like, she's being questioned. I imagine that might be like a dad or a male teacher judging her or questioning her, or, and again, that's so often common again in this culture around girls and wisdom and, male teachers and things in the past. That's been common too. So again, just lots of compassion for both sides, because these are really, really, really painful things that show up, really painful. Which again is why we just always talk about, if you can get an empathy buddy or a listening partner, and you can find out on the free Facebook group about that, or Carolina Valencia Coleman's free Facebook group. It's so essential. This is, sometimes you just go, oh, it's just aware parenting, and you just listen to crying, you just do attachment. This helps us connect with the most painful feelings that we have been protecting ourselves from, often for decades. It's big.
It's so big. It is. And I mean, sometimes, I've worked with clients around this where I might suggest something like, okay, if you feel comfortable with the crying, then perhaps just saying to your partner, look, I'm really comfortable with it. I'm going to do this part. I know you're far more comfortable with play, so if you want to do that, then that's okay. But I'm really willing to keep doing that. And I think the more we do it and the more we model it, and as we've just talked about before, we see the evidence after of the child being more relaxed or more playful or sleep better, all that kind of stuff. It's slowly we begin to see that it's safe. We begin to see that it's enough. And that as we, of course, if we're the one doing the listening to the feelings, we make sure we have our feelings heard around that, and then we're doing it for our child. I just see that it works in the whole family. Even if the partner's a bit resistant and they're standing back going, I don't know, this feels tricky. It might be for that first person just saying, I know you want to distract her, or you say it's a reason, but I'm willing to just sit and listen. And if that's challenging for you, we can keep talking about it. But that's what I feel I'm going to do here. And sometimes it is, the more we model it, the more we see the evidence, and it slowly starts to shift. Or you do open up those conversations around, exactly as you said, what does this feel like in your body? Where is it at for you? And to plant some of those seeds to go, it makes so much sense why it would feel uncomfortable for you. Like I in workshops, and I think you do this as well, Marion, of, when a child is upset, and we can be really present and still and listen to their feelings. And then, we can model it to adults, go, so let's just imagine that you're upset. Tell me about something that happened during your day, right? And so an adult might go into, oh, I had a really hard day at work, and this happened and that happened. And as they're telling us what's going on, you pick up something and you shake it in their face and go, look at this thing here. Or do you want a drink? Put this in your mouth. Or you try and shake them or jig them to distract them from their feelings. And it can be funny as you do it with an adult. It helps them to see, what does it feel like when we try and distract you from your feelings? What does it feel like when we're trying to make you drink something, or trying to distract you when you're telling me how you feel? What does it feel like? It doesn't feel good. But when you're telling me how you feel, and I'm compassionate, and I'm sitting here and I am listening to you, what does it feel like? And again, it might be that modeling as an adult, what does this feel like to you? Can you imagine then what it might feel like to our baby when we do that? And sometimes that can help us go, yeah, oh, okay, I get it. I get why. It still may feel difficult to do it, but I have an understanding of the why behind it. So that you might want to try that next time your partner's unloading about work. Pick up something and shake it in their face. Or not. They might not like that. But, I think it is. That's literally what we're doing sometimes, is just trying to go, I'm trying to make this, pretend this is not happening, and let's make it all go away. And actually doesn't feel good as a human, really, at all.
It's a really great exercise. It's one I've done for many years in workshops, where you actually do, and also try and jiggle them, or, just here's a lovely book, or here's your phone. And actually, to see, for most of us, it will help us see what was done to us, because some people will give up, and some people will feel really frustrated, some people will dissociate. So again, it's really helpful to see what happened to us. The other thing I was thinking as you were talking, Lael, as well, is if if there's one partner who hasn't perhaps ever cried as an adult or got comfortable with their feelings, and if you see your partner consistently holding the baby or listening to the toddler having a rage and listening to the crying, and they're there and they're calm in their body and I'm here and I'm listening, I love you and let it all out, sweetheart, is that there's a reparenting that can happen there. So I know that really happened for me in even the doing of it, that I could feel, as well as, when I was saying to Lani, and I'm right here, I'm listening, sweetheart, I could feel that happening for the younger parts of me too. And so I think, again, if the other partner's open to that, to actually go, I know you want to run away and you want to stop it and you feel anxious, how would it be even just to stay for 2 minutes and just see if you can also hear my loving voice, or even just feel, sit close to me and feel my calm, relaxed body, feel how calm and relaxed my body is whilst I'm here with this crying, because that somatic sense of, oh wow, there's someone present, which is what most of us didn't get. There's someone calm and relaxed while I'm having these big feelings, and that can start to help the person who finds it hard to feel more willing and more comfortable to feel more.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, as a stepmom, I'd love to hear about navigating aware parenting across two households who don't communicate particularly well or necessarily share the same ideas around parenting. We only have our daughter with us a few nights a fortnight, and she's starting to develop patterns of trying to hide her emotions from us despite our best efforts. I struggle to navigate how I can turn up for her without feeling like I'm perhaps overstepping.
Just lots, again, oodles and oceans and mountains of compassion about how hard this is. And I just think, playfulness can be really helpful if you're feeling unsure. It sounds like in this position, maybe kind of moving in and being a little bit playful, because that can be really helpful. Like when there's big feelings, and perhaps going right full blast in can be a bit challenging to actually, find ways to play, because that can be really helpful. And I know, when we, my children have been going back and forth for 10 years now. And I remember in the early days, like the He's Mine game, which we share about, I think it's a Lawrence Cohen game from Playful Parenting, the book. And we play no, he's mine, no, but he's mine, no, he's mine. And Michael and I, we would laugh a lot, because there was parts of us that were also going, no, I want him, no, I want her, no, I want her. So finding ways to do attachment play that can help, even if it can help both family systems, that also can be really helpful. So surprising things can be helpful. Play is one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really stand by too, with some of the families I've worked with, is that children feel intuitively who's a safe person, even if they're not showing you right now what's going on. When we keep creating safety, emotional safety, when we use play, when we show interest in their lives, when we're like, hey, I just want to hang with you and I don't need anything from you, I don't have an agenda here, I just want to be with you, they feel that, they do. And even if, and sometimes it's, if a child has a wall up, sometimes it takes a bit of time to melt that wall. And that melting happens with play, connection, just being, hanging out. And it may be, you just focus on doing that for a month. And then, one day you take the dog for a walk and all of a sudden they start telling you something. And just play it cool. Don't jump in with, oh my God, thank you so much for sharing my feelings, I've been so worried about you and now you tell me everything. They'll be like, okay, well, I'm not doing that again. Just be cool and just be there, because sometimes it takes a bit of time. Sometimes it takes time for them to really trust, can I bring this to you? Are you going to freak out? Are you just going to listen? Are you going to get judgy on me? And that is, I think, comes from the consistency of connection and that expression of love that really is, hey, I see you and accept you and I'll meet you where you're at. And so sometimes that is not pushing, even though you can see they're hiding it or holding it. It is just making the effort to be there and just keep working on it, so that when they are ready, then they will kind of bring that to the relationship. So I have seen that work quite a few times, that, we just really work on the relationship and being, and then when a child feels ready, they're like, hey, can I tell you this, or this is what's going on for me, and we really be that safe person. Yeah, sometimes it takes a bit of time though. Okay, we're almost at the end, so I just want to do 2 more questions. Some tips on bringing 2 families together to make a new family. Well, my big thing with that is just listen to everyone's feelings. It's okay for
That could
everyone
be
to
the
have
answer to
feelings.
every question, basically. Every question you have, that's the answer.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is, when you bring 2 families together, of course there's going to be feelings about it, and it's okay for everyone to have feelings about it. It's okay to be like, I don't like that he's my stepbrother, or I don't want that to share a room with someone, or it's okay. Like, just keep listening, like, and don't try and justify why it'll be great and we'll all get to go on holidays together, and don't try and make it okay. Just listen. Yeah, that sounds hard. What else annoys you? And what else feels tricky? And just keep listening. Make it okay for them to feel that this feels tricky. Make it okay for everybody to be like, oh, this is hard. You might want to have family meetings where you all get together and you all go, okay, well, what feels tricky and what feels good, and how could we all do it better as a new family together? I would just keep working on communication, on connection, on listening to how everybody feels about it. And also, as the parent, like, to just be very mindful, if you've got this utopian happy family, so this is how we should look, like, to just be very careful of, no, my kids should be happy and grateful and this is how it should be, and just to actually go, it's going to find its space, and sometimes that takes time and we need to be patient, and I'm holding that vision of us all having a beautiful harmonious family, but sometimes we've got to go through a bit of messiness to find our way there.
Yes.
Anything you want to add?
No, that's beautiful.
All right, I'm going to just finish off one more question, which is how to get out of the blame cycle. And the examples here: why didn't you pack? And why is it always me doing everything? How to explain a mother's or a primary care giver's mental load to a partner. Oh, this could be a whole podcast.
Yeah, well, there's again so much cultural stuff going on there, isn't there? And around often again the gender thing, that in our culture women have been conditioned to take on everything and take responsibility for it and not know just the unseen work. So just love to anyone who's in that position, again, whatever gender you are. What was the question? I think also really just getting clear about, rather than blame, just coming back to expressing feelings, I statements, and not because you, and not even like, I know often for women, I know I used to do this a lot. It's like, but before we even ask for something, I've done this, that, and the other, and I've done that, and then, and would you be willing to, all this kind of justifying is so much. And we've talked about this lots in earlier podcasts around really the incredibly powerful work of claiming our needs and how important they are, and the big work that is is involved, but actually just to get really clear, be able to clearly say, I feel really tired, I need. So I learned this from MVC, and I'm really grateful. Really specific requests: I'm really tired, I need some help, would you be willing to do the washing up? Like really clear requests. So in MVC there's a thing, female-itis and male-itis, and the female-itis is not making clear requests and saying things like, I really need some support, but not actually saying really clearly and specifically what would meet our need for support. And actually, really having those specific conversations can be so helpful, on both sides. Like, because often we go, well, why aren't you supporting me? But we're not actually clearly saying, this would meet my need as well. This doesn't, this would. And both sides, that really clear communication, which is not always easy when we're exhausted and overwhelmed and pissed off and fed up and outraged and sad and depressed. So lots of love and compassion in the process.
Totally. And I think it's that thing too, when we are in that blame cycle, when we're making it about the other person, we are deflecting from what we're actually feeling, because we're really saying, if you just did this, my life would be okay. But really, as you say, it's about, well, where are your needs not being met, and how do you meet them, or what do you need to ask for, or all those kind of pieces. And that's some, whenever we're all about who's doing it tougher and comparing and playing that game, no one's ever going to win that game, ever. We just become about competing, and it's often, it takes us to actually sit in what it is around, where am I not getting my needs met, what do I need to create some more limits or boundaries in my world, what is it that I really deeply desire here, and how do I get that? And is there a story that says I don't deserve that? Or is there that story there that says I have to do it all because you can't do it right? And then if I'm not doing it all, then I'm not a good mother. Like, there's so many threads that impact how we think and feel around these things. And it's powerful to unpack them. And that can be with a listening partner or an aware parenting instructor or someone, or a therapist or a counselor, to really get behind. Whenever we are projecting onto our partner around why they're not right or doing it the wrong way, there's always a story in it for us. And that's, I often go, let's look at our story first before we even take it to the partner to see what's going on. I also think too, I just want to address that mental load thing. I remember thinking that we would go away and I've packed 5 people's bags and I've got all the groceries and that, and my husband would pack 1 bag and he would still be the last one to get in the car. And I'd be like, what? Like, Jesus. I used to get pretty angry and resentful around that. Until exactly what you said, I actually had to delegate. I'd be like, I would really like you to pack all the dog stuff and this stuff and that, Can you do those things for me? You go, yeah, no worries. Right. So sometimes I just needed to ask, and he would be like, yeah, I can do those things. Again, I would really recommend go away for a week and leave your partner to do all the washing and the food and I'm making it sound like partners incompetent. They're not. But sometimes until you have to actually do it all, do you not go, whoa, there's a lot going on here? And I'm like, yeah, that's sometimes what we do. And sometimes we don't get it equally too. And we can flip it the other way. Yes. If you are the main income earner and you're having to earn all the money for the week and you've got the stresses of how we're going to pay the mortgage or what's going to look like, that's a whole other pressure. So I think we can sit in our place and feel really angry and resentful when we're definitely not meeting our own needs. Perhaps we're not, having their self-care or whatever it is that's going on for us, and then feel in that place of resentment. And actually, if we can meet our needs, we can also understand where our partner comes from. Then that's when we can shift the dynamic from competing to working as a team together and really going, hey, what do you need, babe? And then they're like, what do you need? And how do we do this together so we can all get our needs met? Because that's how we create more harmony in our home. It's as simple as that. It's not.
Easy.
Just like that.
I was going to say that too. 2 things. Number one is, if you're having a competition, but I had a really hard day. No, but I listened to 2 hours of crying. Yeah, but I was in a traffic jam for 2 hours. No, but it's like, what's both people needing? Both people are needing a lot of empathy for how hard it is. So in that moment, could you actually both shift and go, oh, we both had a really hard day. Oh gosh, you had it really hard. I had it. Can you just flip to have compassion rather than competing for what you could, I know it's hard in those moments, but it is possible. The other thing
go. I was going to say, and if you are continuously competing, you're never going to get what you want. No. You're never going to, because the other partner is going to be resentful and they're going to have their wall up, and you're still not going to get your needs met. Like, it doesn't go anywhere. No. You're better off just drawing a line and going, this is not working. Sorry, keep going.
Oh, and the other thing I was going to say is, this is where I love my willingness work as well, because there's so often, and with all the blame things, we as we talked about before, and we can be saying, why aren't you doing X, Y, and Z? And actually, when we connect in with, am I willing? We are not willing for them to do that, or we're not willing to have our needs for support met. And there are all kinds of things we can do to find willingness. But so that is where our power is. That's why I love the willingness work. Where are we? When we're blaming, we're giving away our power. When we connect with, what do I really want? Am I willing for this? Do the work. That is where we really feel powerful. And that's where we come into power with our partner or ex. If we're in blame, we are disconnected from our power. Never works. Feels shit. Sorry.
It does. And I have to say, your willingness work is just such a game changer, Marian. Like, I highly recommend everybody do it and get on it, because it's a really defining part of changing the story. It really is, because it helps us to see how where we're blocking ourselves, or where we're still sitting in protection around what we perceive that we want and why it's not happening. So it's so powerful, your work. I just highly recommend everybody doing it, because it's empowering. It is so empowering. It actually helps you find your power and then create the life that you want when you delve into that. It is really, It's a game changer. So do it.
I feel so touched. Thank you.
Oh, it's true. It's true. Gosh, you've taught me so much about willingness. It's amazing.
Love it.
Get on it, people. I'm sure there is a course. I know there's a course.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish up. We've been talking for a long time. Anything you would like to offer? What's your offering, Marion?
How do you feel? How do you feel? And would you like some empathy? Would you like to put your hand on your heart? What's shown up for you as you listen to us today? What do you need? Are there any steps that you'd like to take, having heard what we've said? And are you willing? I'm going to always ask that. Are you willing to take a step towards that? And if not, why not? And can you give some love to that?
Yeah,
what about you, Lael?
Beautiful. Yeah, mine would be, can you find within you the compassion for your partner or your ex-partner and where they are turning up? Because as we talk about always, we're always coming from those places of protection, and we're always coming from those places that are, how do I keep myself safe? So can we meet that with compassion in our partners or ex-partners, and can we meet that in ourselves in that place as well? You know, because yeah, as we always say, compassion is the way through, or it's the starting place often. So important. All right, any offerings you want to tell people about, Marion?
Thank you, Lael. If anyone's been following my social media, I've had a sale of 25,000 different courses, and it's the last one just about happening now if you're listening on a Thursday night, a Friday morning. Friday morning's the last one, and I've got 4 really great aware parenting offerings, from things like tantrums to how can we respond helpfully to our child's behavior. Little offerings, not big courses, just little offerings. So if you're newish or you just want to dive in deeper to any of those, there's one on aggression as well. There's a half price sale on, so come and have a look and see if that resonates with you. Thank you for asking, so I can tell everyone about them.
Good, do it.
How about you, lovely Lael? What have you got?
Oh, well, what I've got at the moment is a website that's just crashed, so I'm not going to tell anybody about anything at the moment, because I'm currently sitting in the I'm sitting in the like, yep, I love technology, it's just being fixed. So, you know, yeah, look, just
in a few days,
wait till my next podcast.
By tomorrow when it's all fixed.
You can find something anyway. All right, thank you everybody for being here. We so appreciate your questions and your comments. It's so great. It's so beautiful for us to be able to answer questions around this, because we really want to make sure that you get what you need. I mean, we do have a beautiful catalogue of podcasts now that cover many topics.
Yes.
And so we're really kind of wanting to work to, you know, to give you what you need. So we might do, I think we're going to do a whole one before the end of the year, and then we've got a little offering we're going to gift you for the end of the year, which is going to be pretty beautiful. So
we might possibly do a Q&A on sleep next.
Yes,
keep an eye out.
Next one.
We'll go and share on social media, so come and share your sleep questions. Just, you know, that will be a juicy one.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, thank you for being here, everybody.
So much love to you.